Well, COVID-19 has meant big changes for businesses, not just in terms of what's happening in their business, but how they're operating their business. And that is true as well for a big technology company in this country like OpenText, which is going to be, as we get through the pandemic, essentially closing half of its traditional offices, given their experience so far with having employees work from home. Let's check in with Mark Barrenechea. He's the CEO of OpenText and joins us with a little bit more detail. Mark, just talk about this process of getting the team working from home and what you learned in these last few weeks.
Yeah, John, good morning. Yeah, I mean, look, if a CEO walked into their company, at the end of last year and just said, look, we're going to send all our employees home for a few months and we're going to experiment at that scale, you would have thought, really hard about, was that a good experiment to run? But, here we are through COVID-19. And for OpenText, over a weekend, we've sent our 15,000 employees to work from home. And it's been very productive for us, just across the board, from our client-facing teams all the way through running our data centers. And in fact, over the last 100 days, we've processed near 4 trillion in commerce over our trading grid, doing a lot of this remotely. So for many businesses that have invested in these type of platforms, working from home is working.
So let's go through that in a little more detail, because you said, and it's not just an OpenText story, it's a story for any business right now, which is, in normal circumstances, you might not have done this, right? You might not just sort of rip the Band-Aid, see what happens, because there's a lot of reasons not to do something overnight. What was your biggest concern, or what were you watching most closely? And how did the reality compare to the concern maybe that you had leading into this?
Yeah, I mean, you're concerned about teams' productivities and teams being able to work. So very, very productively. We're an IP business. We have cycles of R&D. So the first thing you just worry about is, does your technology platform work? Will it scale? Will it allow you be able to do everything from run your finance, run your customer operations, deliver product, deliver your services? And as an IP-based company, we are able to do that. The greatest concern, of course, is the productivity of your team. Now, thinking longer term, we are certainly going to have to reinvent certain ways of how we collaborate, of how we do design. So we see the new normal, or the new equilibrium, really being a hybrid world of where we probably a majority of our organization will be work from home, while we'll rotate into physical spaces at greater distancing to do more of our in-person innovation. So that go-forward world looks very hybrid.
Yeah. So if the majority of your team works from home, and I alluded to this at the offset, you guys were already thinking about restructuring the business, focusing on doing some restructuring. Tell us more about the plan with office space. I mean, because we have this conversation all the time around how many people are going to continue to go to offices, how that's going to change. Just give us the numbers behind what you're doing.
Well, if you don't need to reopen a physical space, I encourage you to think really hard and don't open the space. So we've looked at our physical facilities, our fleet, if you will, across the world, 15,000 employees. We operate in 40 countries. And we've decided to not reopen 20% of our square footage, which translates into half of our offices. So simply half of our offices are not going to reopen. We're gonna keep our headquarters, of course. We're gonna keep our country headquarters. We're gonna keep our centers of excellence, and that translates into roughly 40 buildings, 45 buildings across the globe that we're going to keep open, and we're going to close roughly 50 of those offices, smaller offices. And when employees need to get together, they'll go to their country head office or their closest office. They'll do more hoteling, and maybe it's 1 week a month that they're physically together. But I'd rather be spending that money on the company, on innovation, on our employees, versus spending that money on a building or reconfiguring a building that just simply isn't going to be needed in the new equilibrium.
In some ways, what you're talking about feeds into the other story we've talked about this morning. As you know, Air Canada came out with their financial results, and the CEO, Calin Romanescu, saying, look, I mean, to get back to some kind of normal for airline travel, it's probably going to take about 3 years or so. So clearly you guys are thinking about where you're working from. But in terms of the travel, what's the roadmap for you guys look like? Do you feel confident that you guys can get what you need done? I mean, forget about going into the office. Can you get what you need done without moving around the globe as much? Because as you mentioned, you've got people all over the globe.
Yeah. The short answer is yes, we can. Digital allows us, in fact, digital and this acceleration to digital, whether it's a supply chain, whether it's getting your work from home more productive, is allowing us to, actually attract new talent, because the talent we can attract isn't tied to a location now. Second is, I'll tell you, myself, my leadership, our managers are feeling more free, actually, to be able to connect with employees we've never connected with before. And it's a new experience. I mean, home is just not a home today. Home is home. It's work. It's a school. It's a playground. It's a place of worship. It's many of those things. But the technology platforms work. They scale, and they allow you a new freedom to actually connect with more people and actually be more personable in that connection. And for us, it'll actually open up a talent base for us. To attract new talent in new places. So look, we have to think about what this new normal looks like, this new equilibrium, and obviously go after that digitalization really hard and really fast.
Mark, really interesting. Thanks as always for shedding some light on it. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, John.
Mark Barrenechea, CEO of OpenText, joining us.